And welcome to Paranormal Stakeout. I'm Larry Lawson, your host, inviting you to join me on the journey to discover what really exists on the other side. And as always, we are coming to you from the southern command post of the X Zone Broadcast Network in beautiful Vero Beach and Fellsmere, Florida. Great to be back with everybody tonight from down here in stormy South Florida. And tonight our guest is a gentleman who's one of the well-known names down here in Florida, although he's not with us here anymore, Mr. Chad Talley. At the age of 7, Chad began his journey into the paranormal world. He clearly recalls sitting on his bed watching the drawers on his dresser being pulled out one by one. When he told his mother of this, she gave him books to read and told him to research the subject. From that point on, he was fascinated and captivated by the paranormal. He formed his own team in 2008 called Space Coast Paranormal Society. And in 2017, after 9 years of running the SCPS, he moved to Virginia and joined Roanoke's premier paranormal team, City Paranormal, where he continues his personal journey today. Chad, welcome to Paranormal Stakeout.
It's good to be here, Larry.
Yeah, we missed you since you moved up there. You were definitely one of the names down here, especially up there on the Space Coast. And for those of you in the audience who aren't familiar with how Florida is broken up, Space Coast includes Cape Canaveral, where our space program was launched from. And it's just north of us, and we're here on the Treasure Coast. But Chad, talk to me a little bit. Age 7, you have this experience. Tell us a little bit about that.
Right. I was 7. I recall sitting on my bed and I was watching. You remember those old Ernest movies? It was like Ernest Goes to Prison or something like that.
Yeah.
I was sitting watching one of those movies, and then the drawers one by one pulled out. And me being a 7-year-old kid, I ran downstairs to my mom and I told her what happened. And instead of being one of those parents that's like, "Oh, don't worry, those aren't real, that you're just imagining it," she said, "No, they're real. They're around you all the time. Here's some books to read on it. Read up. Know what you're up against."
Interesting. So your mother was sort of in tune to this?
Right.
Did she ever discuss it with you? Did she ever...
Yeah, we discussed it quite a bit. When we actually moved to Germany, the house that we lived in was super old, and they actually used to hide people there during the Holocaust. We'd investigate our house and our barn and our cellar together.
You and your mom, that's interesting. Well, okay, so that developed your interest. Tell me how it developed from there. I mean, you were 7 at the time. What happened in the coming years up to the point where you formed Space Coast?
Oh my gosh, so much stuff happened in that house when we were there. I wish we could get back into that house. Doors would get kicked in, the drawers would be pulled out, the showers would run. But pretty much everywhere we moved, we had activity happen. We moved to Tennessee after we lived in Florida, and there we had a little girl who looked exactly like my sister. Would walk up and down the hallways. We'd go check on my sister; she'd be out asleep. Mm-hmm. Then we went to Germany, and as I mentioned, everything in Germany that we had. And then back to Florida.
Were you able to do any historical research to tie any of this together?
This is back before I started doing it more professionally. So I didn't really do a whole lot of research. I just went off what my neighbors said, and word of mouth up there. But when I came back to Florida, and I actually joined up with the group, and but they were over in Crystal River, so that was too far for me to go. So I started my own group down in the Space Coast, and from there we actually started doing all the historical research on locations. Good.
And how did that help you hone your skills, shall we say, you and your team?
I learned what to do and what not to do. I learned what gets results and what doesn't get results, and what to play with and what you shouldn't play with.
Well, and a lot of the folks, a lot of teams are spring up out there. There's thousands and thousands of teams in our country today, and even more across the world. How did you pick your team at Space Coast Paranormal? A lot of folks out there listening, maybe wanting to start their own group, maybe wanting to join a group. What did you do to start Space Coast?
So I picked me and my co-founder, Aaron Rothy. We were good buddies. He knew what he was talking about, so we when we started looking for people, we looked for people that had either had experience, knew what they were doing, and if they didn't, which was that's not a bad thing. We can train you the right way if you haven't done something that we haven't fallen into bad habits. But if you have like a particular skill, maybe you're good at researching, or you're good with technology, you're good with computers, building applications, that kind of stuff is what we're looking for.
Okay, so you actually sought those kinds of people out.
Right.
Did you embark? You got somebody that maybe wasn't trained, maybe had just been watching the TV shows. What'd you do to train them? Did you?
Well, we would take them out on 2 practice investigations, get them familiar with the equipment, and then after that, we would get them familiar with review, so that they knew what was and what wasn't a false positive for like EVPs. Like a stomach growling sounds like a demon all over EVP.
Uh-huh. Yeah, we actually just had something like that happen, and we debunked it as a problem with the recorder, actually. So that's very, very important. Did you hold training sessions, or was it all on the job type stuff?
We held training sessions. That warehouse that we actually took you guys to was one of our training spots.
Okay. How often did you bring in new members? What other things did you do to vet them? I'm trying to get folks to understand that getting into one of these teams isn't just a question of, hey, I want to go out and hunt ghosts. That's where I'm going with this.
Right. So how often we looked for team members, depending on what our current roster was, because as a paranormal teams, you get people that come and you get people that go, people that only want to do it part-time. So depending on what our current roster was, we would look for more people, or if somebody reached out to us and said, hey, I want to join, we would say, okay, well, we do an interview, make sure they were up to par.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, we'd go to training. From training, we'd go to training on review, and then a couple of investigations, they'd always be stuck with a senior member of the team on the first couple of investigations, and then we'd see how they do from there, and they can go out on their own.
How often did you get folks just calling you saying, hey, how do I join your team? How do I get out there? How often did that happen?
That happened pretty often, especially after the Florida Today Haunted Brevard. We got a bunch of people that would, I'd say, 3 to 4 every week, if not more.
Wow. Now, that was during what period? I know you ran Space Coast from 08 to about 17, so it's a 9-year period. Did it peak at a certain point? And I'm kind of trying to gauge this with the popularity of the TV shows also.
Right. So I'd say about 2014 to when I left is when it peaked.
Mm-hmm.
I actually had a waiting list that I created for people saying, hey, if we lose somebody, I'll pick you up. I was actually putting people off to other groups as well.
Oh, okay. So still that come. Now, how many of them, when you interviewed them, got their interest peaked from the media, from the TV shows?
I'd say over half.
Over half. And how many of those end up becoming serious investigators?
A good amount of them. I mean, the TV shows, okay. It's a double-edged sword, really. I mean, people get into it because of the TV shows, and when we bring them on, we have to say, hey, look, a lot of that stuff, I mean, it's real, but a lot of it's, staged. So
it's entertainment, right?
Right, it's entertainment. What we're doing, you're going to go into a room and sit, and sometimes nothing happens for hours. You're just going to sit there and keep on trying. And then at the end, you have to do all the review, which they don't really show that much in the shows. You got to sit and listen to hours and hours of audio and video.
Yeah. See, and the reason I'm going through all this, as I said, I've myself get a number of calls from folks wanting to be part of it, and they really, really don't understand it. I'm of a little bit of a different opinion than many of my colleagues on the TV shows. Yes, they're entertainment, and yes, most of it is hogwash. But I do think it brought a certain interest out there, maybe piqued folks' interest that could be and had the ability to be serious investigators, and brought them out in the open. So I do see a positive to the TV shows. Granted, a lot of it's negative, but I do see some positives to it. So
and I can agree with that as well.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting way to look at it. So basically, you ran this group for 9 years, then you left us and moved up to where in Virginia now?
I'm in Roanoke, Virginia now.
Okay, and you're with City Paranormal.
Correct.
Okay, a little bit about those group. Tell me a little bit about them if you could.
They're a great group of people. So when I joined up, my first investigation with them was at an old theater. Up here, there's just so much history up here. So, like, for instance, we're actually going to be at St. Albans Sanitarium here this weekend for EnigmaCon. Mm-hmm. And we've done St. Albans before. It's a great group of people. It's like a big family up here with them. We all get along. We all hang out outside of investigations, which is good. Mm-hmm.
And you say there's that big of a difference in history from Virginia to Florida?
Yes. In Florida, whenever I was trying to find a place to investigate, I noticed sometimes it was hard because if there is a historical place, a lot of them don't want you in because they have their own thing going. Mm-hmm. Up here, there's a bunch of spots, man. That's old buildings, sanitariums. Like the St. Albans is like an hour away from us, and we go there fairly often. Mm-hmm. That place is huge, and we get activity every time we're in there.
Do you feel people up in that neck of the woods are more accepting of this type of investigation than they are in Florida?
I'd say it's about the same. I never really ran across any negativity down in Florida, and I haven't really come across any up here.
Good. Hey, well, listen, we're going to take our first break. Folks, stay with us. We're with Chad Talley from Star City Paranormal in Roanoke, Virginia, and we'll be back right after this break.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone broadcast network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
You have heard of the X-Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV. Plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X-Zone, Sci-Fi, and Horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
Modern Esoteric, Beyond Our Senses by Brad Olson, consummates the lifeology story about where humanity originates. It is the lost continents, the primitive wisdom, the mythos of creation, and the rethinking of ancient history as we are taught in academia. There is much more to the story than what we have been told. As this is the first book in the Esoteric series, Modern Esoteric starts at the beginning of time and accelerates up to this modern age. Future Esoteric is book 2 in the series and takes a forward-looking position ahead of today with an open and honest examination of the ET issue and various unexplained phenomena. To discover the writings of author Brad Olson, visit www.bradolson.com. That's www.bradolson.com.
And we are back on Paranormal Stakeout with my guest tonight, Mr. Chad Talley from Star City Paranormal up in Roanoke, Virginia. Chad, we've talked a lot about building groups and building camaraderie. One of the things I've seen, and I don't know if you have, I'm sure you have in this paranormal field, are issues among groups involving ego, involving this is mine, you can't have it, or this is, I think you even mentioned it before, well, this is my place, you can't get in there. Have you run into that much either in Florida or up in your new home in Virginia?
I've run into it before. I haven't run into much of it up here, but I have run into it before, especially with like groups. Say you have your own group. Another group isn't going to be happy if you get an investigation of their neck of the woods. There's some people are pretty territorial when it comes to that kind of stuff.
How can that be helpful to the cause?
It's not.
Okay. It's something that really, really concerns me because one of the things that I'm seeing happen in this field, and we talk about it a lot here on Paranormal Stakeout, is we're not going forward. It seems like we've got tons of mom and pop groups, and once again, I've said this before, there's nothing wrong with groups that just want to go out for the weekend and have fun, get the thrill of it. But until we get to the point where we're seriously researching the subject, sharing information, documenting it properly, it doesn't seem like we're going to move forward. What say you?
I can agree. I think there needs to be more camaraderie in the paranormal community. I think we need to communicate better.
Mm-hmm. What else do you think? You've been at this for a while. What else do you think we should do to start bringing this stuff together?
I think that if we set up some kind of a way for groups to communicate together, maybe a community board where we can share ideas or we can share evidence. If we have, say you have an EVP, you want another set of ears on, or you want to make sure it's not a false positive, you can post that up there. Groups can look into it and give you feedback, constructive criticism kind of thing.
How do you avoid the issue of, well, I don't agree with how you got that EVP, and I think it says something else, and I just totally disagree with you. Your stuff stinks. How do we avoid those types of issues?
I think you have to put your ego aside when it comes. If you want to further the community, you're going to have to put your ego aside and offer constructive criticism.
But that's the problem. We can't find folks that do that so often, and I guess that's my frustration.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on creating a national, even an international repository of this information that folks can have access to? And in addition to that, creating a structure or a standard by which, you may ask questions a little differently. Your personality is different, so you may ask, question differently than another person. But the structure is still the same. A lot like what we do in law enforcement. You got any thoughts on that along those lines?
I mean, I'm completely up for a national, international set for people being able to access all that information. I did hear years ago, I heard that somebody was starting one, but I don't think it ever got any traction. They were actually even doing a thing where groups could sign up with their equipment, and other groups that didn't have a particular piece could check out that piece online.
Interesting.
Log that they're taking it, and they borrow it, and they give it back, and they check it back in with that person. They check that it's back in. So like an equipment library kind of thing, but I don't think it ever got traction.
See, and that tells me that there are folks out there that have that desire to band together, to work together towards the common goal, but you keep saying it didn't get traction. That's what we got to work on, my friend. We got to work on getting traction. Do you agree?
I agree.
Yeah. When you set up your training for new investigators, even when you set up your group, did you create a standard from somebody else's work? Did you create your own standard?
I created my own standard. As I mentioned, we were with a team but they used methods that we don't typically use. Ours is more scientific. Mm-hmm. So I took what I wanted, and I created a system off of that, how I want everything to go.
Okay. When you say scientific, can you clarify that a little bit for me?
We use less mediums, psychics, we mostly use scientific equipment or EVPs, video cameras. We do use a spirit box, or a portal, or a wonder box, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Oh, now that's a great topic right there. As we talk about moving into the more scientific world, probably one of the newest, hottest pieces of equipment out there are things like the it's instrumental transcommunication, wonder boxes, ghost boxes, things like that, working with radio waves. What's your experience with those?
My first experience with them was actually when I came up here to this team. They have a portal, and that thing's amazing. Even without the app, you just plug the spirit box in there, and it cuts out all static. All that comes through is the actual words. That thing's awesome.
And the portal typically scans radio frequencies, correct? That's the same one, right? Yeah. See, that's a very interesting topic because there's a lot of Dr. Rodive was one of the leaders, the groundbreakers in that area. I find that fascinating. I had trouble with it up front, I'll be honest with you. When I first was introduced to it myself, radio frequencies, too many radio stations could come in. It's a little on the strange side. Then we had an event, a group came up with one of those pieces of equipment to Fellsmere, and we were sitting in one of the rooms there, and asked a question. It came up with an answer of, how many people were in the room. It was interesting, but I still wasn't much of a believer. And then I asked the question, so where are we? And, being in this part of Florida, it would be pretty reasonable to think somebody would hear Orlando or Jacksonville or Miami across the radio. Mm-hmm. But a word clear as a bell came out, Fellsmere. I was a little taken back because Fellsmere doesn't normally roll off the tongue in a major part of Florida. And I asked the second time, okay, tell me again where we are. And the portal the second time said Fellsmere. My mind's been a little bit more open to it. I want to hear more about it. The piece of equipment you have there is the portal. Mm-hmm. Do they have any other types of spirit boxes? I know there's the SB7, the SB11. Any others of those like that?
We have the 11, and we'll plug the 11 into the spirit box, into the portal, and it'll work together, and it'll cut out static. So all you'll hear is the words coming out of the SB11 through the portal. Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned the radio waves too. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
You mentioned the radio waves. We actually have Faraday pouches too that we pop the SB11s in to cut out a lot of the radio waves. Okay,
because that's always been a concern of mine. I'm still interested in the science of it and how this works. So we're going to be dealing with that a little bit more in some future shows. But very, very fascinating stuff. Other than the portals, the ghost box, what's your other favorite piece of equipment that you'll use?
I do like the thermal cameras.
Mm-hmm. And how do you use them?
We'll sit up stationary and see if we get anything like in a spot where, I'll give St. Albans as an example. They have a hallway that they have, I believe they call him the creeper. It's a long hallway, and he'll walk from door to door going down the hallways. And we'll just sit up there and see if we can get him.
Mm-hmm. Now, always cold spots? Or do you sometimes get hot spots?
I mean, it can be either or. I mean, I think they can manifest however they want to.
Well, generally the common belief is that they come off as cold. Have you experienced them getting a reading that's hot that you can't explain? And what are your thoughts on it?
We were doing a class at the St. Albans, and one of the girls had the thermal camera pointing down the hallway, and they actually saw a yellow ball, like somebody was poking their head around the one of the corners, and there was nobody down there. So it read off as yellow, which means it was putting off heat. It wasn't as hot as like a person would be, but it was putting off heat.
Interesting. And what do you personally attribute that to?
I attribute it to it's how they want to manifest, how they want to show themselves.
Okay, because one of the prevailing theories is they're drawing energy from the air, thus dropping the temperature. So that's why I was kind of
right. So
wondering on that one. What kind of thermal do you use? Can I ask that just for our audience to know?
It's a flare. It's one of the handheld ones.
Okay. Have you used anything that is off of an app for the iPhones or the a smartphone?
You mean like the what is it, the Ghost Radar ones?
No, not necessarily. I'm going to ask you about that in a second, but I mean using FLIR, an attachment for your cell phone.
I did see that attachment that they have. It's like the $200 piece you can plug into the bottom of your phone and download the FLIR app. Mm-hmm. That thing looks awesome, and it's a cheap alternative compared to like the $700-800 FLIR cameras.
Very true. But what are your thoughts about all these apps that are now on the phone? And I don't even necessarily mean the ghost radars, although I would like your opinion on that. I'm also interested in some of the apps they use like on the ghost boxes.
Okay, so we have used the app for the portal. It's all right. I prefer the spirit box being plugged into the portal itself. As for the ghost radar, sorry, go ahead.
I'm going to cut you short here because we're about ready to break in just a couple seconds. Folks, this is Paranormal Stakeout. Hey, do you want to hear your favorite X-Zone broadcast shows 24/7, 365 on your cell phone? 605-477-9614 is the best way to do it. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. Stay with me. We're with Chad Talley up from Star City Paranormal in Roanoke, Virginia. We'll be back right after this break to talk more.
Broadcast studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, to the world and beyond. You're watching the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
AVS Media.
You have heard of the X-Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X-Zone, Sci-Fi, and Horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world, interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. Rob McConnell here, presenting an overview for Nicholas Paul Jennings, author of a fascinating book, Amen. It presents facts revealed by Egyptologists, facts that enable us to understand why Amen is the beginning of creation of God. It provides recommendations for religious leaders of the major religions to unify their beliefs and teach the Word of God. Love one another. Amen informs people how mankind conceived God. It was the Egyptians that developed the concepts of a soul, a hereafter, and Son of God. And finally, after the worship of many gods, they conceived the belief in one universal God, the maker of all there is. For more information, visit www.futureofgodamen.com. That's www.futureofgodamen.com.
And welcome back to Paranormal Stakeout. My guest tonight, Chad Talley. And Chad, before the last break, we were talking a little bit about apps. Gotten great information on some of the equipment you use, but I do want to chat a little bit about phone apps and the apps that you can use for the portal. Tell me your experience with them and your thoughts on them.
I'm not a huge fan of the apps for the phone. I'll use Ghost Radar as an example. I haven't found any real correlation between actual activity. It'll just spit out random words. I mean, yeah, if you throw enough at the wall, something's going to stick.
Exactly.
So I'm not a huge fan of those apps.
Do you know anything about the science of those apps? And because I read somewhere where there's, and I am not a technical guy. I'll be the first to tell you, but I read where the internal workings of a cell phone lends itself to the ability to be adapted to paranormal equipment. And I'm not the brightest star in the sky, but that just seems a little bit of a stretch to me. You're a little bit more technical than I am. What are they trying to say?
I mean, I could see that being used with like more modern cell phones, but until they come up with a legit app that I can get behind, I'm not going to really buy into the apps like Ghost Radar. I think that's just a library of words. It just spits out words.
I kind of look at it more as a parlor game myself. Now, going to the apps that's used on the portal and some of the other ITC types of equipment, mm-hmm. What about those apps?
So I've only used the actual portal app once, and it like talked backwards a bunch. Mm-hmm. I think the stuff that talked forwards was supposed to be the real stuff, but I can't really say much to that. I've only used it once.
Mm-hmm. Have you spoken or talked to anybody else in the field that has had success with it?
Yeah, I have. I mean, some people swear by it. I mean, I haven't used it enough to say one thing or the other, but I have heard people swear by it. I have heard people say, "Oh, I don't really," I've heard both sides of the fence.
Okay, I'm going to lay odds the jury is still out because the appropriate research hasn't been done. That's going to be kind of where I'm going with this. Would be interested, anybody out there who's listening tonight, if you got thoughts or comments, go ahead and get a hold of me at www.paranormalstakeout.com. Would love to hear your thoughts about that also. That's probably the hottest thing in paranormal equipment today. But what do you, Chad Talley, think? Where do you think our next big breakthrough has got to come through in order to further the field?
The next big breakthrough, I think we need. We've touched on this already. I think once we have a camaraderie, we can actually work together in order to further the field.
Right.
I think
but I'm talking technology-wise. What I'm talking about,
technology-wise, I think we're okay where we're at. It's just perfecting what we have.
But who's doing that? It seems like we're all just using the same stuff over and over. Who's doing it? Are you aware of anybody?
I'm not aware of anybody personally. I know Steve Huff is working on his portals and his wonder boxes, mm-hmm. but he's the only one personally that I know working on equipment like that.
Okay, well, and I think that's something that we need to do. Because we're using a lot of the same techniques we've used for the last 20 years, and I'm seeing the need to. And I'm okay with improving what we've got, but there's got to be a new door that needs to be opened somewhere, and that's kind of what I'm hoping for. So once again, anybody out there that's listening that has thoughts, please get a hold of me and give me your thoughts. So with that,
or tweaking things. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off again. Or tweaking things that we already have, like we had something called the real-time EVP, which cut out the need to review because it had a 3-second delayed playback. It's just a standard recorder, but you could play it back in your ear. So as you're talking, you could hear whatever, if anything, responded to you in real time. So you could actually have a real time conversation. I mean, stuff like that's always nice.
But we've got, and you're right, it is. But we still get. the science behind that is still something that we've got to explore, and we've got to somehow, in my opinion, pin that down a little bit. So keeping all of that in mind, we've talked about some really great stuff here, equipment, training and whatnot, but it all boils down to what the heck is it? What is it we're dealing with? And I'd like to know your opinions. What's a ghost, Chad Talley? In your opinion, what is a ghost?
That's a wide question.
It sure is. That's the one we got to ask.
There are so many prevailing theories. There's the theory of other dimensions. There's the theory of the afterlife, or they're just energy imprinted onto the area. I with what I've talked to and what I've seen, I tend to believe that there are people that have passed on. I do like the theory that it could be alternate dimensions that are just kind of colliding with ours.
Well, you mentioned something earlier in the show that I thought was really interesting, and that was seeing a little girl in your house that looked like your sister.
Mm-hmm.
Is that an example of the parallel dimensions?
It could very well be, because she was in more of like a Victorian like an underdress kind of thing, like Victorian pajama kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
So it could just be like time, skipping into our time.
What is your thoughts and opinions regarding other paranormal activities, Bigfoot, aliens, anything like that, correlating?
I mean, I like all of those. I haven't really seen enough to know if they're real or not, especially the Bigfoot thing. I know a lot of people love Bigfoot. I love the story, but we haven't found anything.
I agree. What I'm getting at here is there a correlation between those types of phenomenon and ghosts?
I mean, I think there could be. A lot of people will just want to know that there's something else out there,
Yeah, and I don't know what it is yet. I believe there is something else out there, whether it's our own mind. I've very fascinated with the experiments done about the power of our own mind. I don't know how familiar you are with them. I believe it's the Phillips experiment is one of them that was called, and it has to do with our own mind creating our own evidence.
Right. What is it? There's been documented cases where poltergeist activity has been caused by people going through stress.
Yeah. So if that's the case, could it be we're creating this ourselves?
It could be.
See, and that's where we got to get to in our field. Wherever the evidence leads us is the answer, and not what we want it to be. So, and we all have our opinions, and I think that's good. I tend to go along more how you feel, and that's they are the spirits of the departed. But we got to keep an open mind, and we've got to explore all the answers. As a cop, I collect evidence, and I go where the evidence takes me, and that's what we got to get better at is collecting that evidence. So, my thoughts on that anyway. What do you think is the biggest problem in our field today?
I think there's aside from the camaraderie that we've gone into numerous times already, I think a lot of the newer groups that are they're watching the shows and they're going out and they're not getting great at debunking stuff. So they'll go into a spot, somebody invites them into their house saying, "Oh, we're having this happen," instead of trying to find the natural causes for that happening. They'll just say, "Oh, it's paranormal. It's definitely paranormal," and that leaves that client thinking that they're trapped with whatever's there, and it could very well be that there's nothing actually there.
That brings up a really, really good subject, and that's individuals that whether they're doing it because they don't know any better or they're doing it for nefarious reasons, going into people's homes, basically scaring them, basically telling them a story and not doing a proper investigation for their own personal purposes. Fake groups, for lack of a better term. That's something that really worries me because that affects all of our credibilities, wouldn't you think?
Mm-hmm. It does. Like I went with the group and we did a place in Tampa and it was above a stage and they were looking at like the stage lights. Oh, there's figures up there. There's figures up there. Those are the stage lights. Those are nothing but stage lights.
But was this a group that was just undertrained and overly excited, or was this a group that was, shall we say, trying to make something that wasn't there so they could come back or they can get a name for themselves?
It wasn't trying to make a name for themselves. They were they had been around for a little while, and I didn't go out with them anymore.
Yeah, and there's folks out there that want to get on TV shows. There's folks out there that want to maybe start charging money, and that's what I'm worried about. How do we combat that, Chad, in your opinion? How do we keep these groups from getting out there and doing these types of things?
I mean, we could create, like, I don't want to say a guild, but like a group of all of us.
Standards and training organization?
Right.
Okay.
So that we can, if people can report to us, oh, this group is da-da-da, they're all fake, we can actually put like them on a list so that we know what the fake groups are out there, just in it for the money, in it for the fame, and just scaring people and not actually doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and that is one of the reasons why I am such a stickler on creating standards and training, so we can avoid folks going out there, even if they're not doing it for selfish reasons. They're just not trained well enough, or they don't understand what it is we do, and they end up hurting folks. I mean, I've seen groups go out there and say, you've had an evil entity in your house, and we have sent it away. Well, how the heck do they really know that? That's what worries me. Well, listen, we're about ready to take our final break here. So, folks, great conversation with Chad Talley. Stick with us for this last half here, and we're going to be back in just a few seconds here on the X Zone Broadcast Network. Stay tuned.
You have heard of the X Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X Zone, sci-fi, and horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
The new nonfiction book, Razor of Madness, is similar to cult movies like Clockwork Orange, Dragon's Tattoo, or The Other Side of Hell. Wayne Morin Jr. and Thomas Lee Howell expose widespread and systematic deficiencies in this thought-provoking tell-all novel. Mind control rages among scholars in law schools. Human rights are ignored while thought reform and mental manipulation are accepted practices used as behavior modification. Dr. Louis Jolyon West comes to mind. Media and public scrutiny shows that United States mental hospitals are in fact destructive murder industries. Razor of Madness expose novel details this epidemic through an in-depth professional and personal investigation. For decades, there has been a revolving door policy that still releases killers and pedophiles back into society. The maestro of mind control continues to haunt America to this very day. Razor of Madness is available in paperback or as a downloadable ebook at Amazon.com.
I'm William S. Peckham. If you enjoy a good mystery with a touch of the paranormal, then you'll love my novel, From Out of the Woodwork. It's the story of a young Toronto contractor, Sean Kennedy, who buys derelict homes, guts them, and turns them into multifamily dwellings. Slums just waiting to happen. When Sean buys 29 Livery Lane, the house fights back. Former owners unexpectedly come out of the woodwork as he starts the destruction. The apparitions come to him when he touches old books, reads hidden letters, rummages through old boxes, finds a locket, or reads a discovered manuscript of a murder mystery. From Out of the Woodwork will take you from 1899 to the horror of the World Trade Center, September 11, 2001. Check out From Out of the Woodwork on my website, www.williamspeckham.com.
And we are back on Paranormal Stakeout with my guest tonight, Mr. Chad Talley. Chad's been an excellent conversation. Hopefully folks out there that are wanting to start groups have gotten some good ideas. I want to mention Chad's website, starcityparanormal.org, is the organization he's involved with. His email, SCPS@gmail.com, is a great way to get a hold of him. He also runs a blog site, Paranormal Consultants and Referral. And Chad, if you can tell folks how to get to that, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, the Paranormal Consultants and Referral is on Facebook. It's a Facebook page. What I'll do is I'll feature groups. Like if you have a group and you want to be featured and you want people to know that you're out there, you can send me that message. Okay. Or if you're looking for help, say you have activity, you message me. I'll look at the activity, let you know if I can debunk it right then and there, or I can put you in contact with a group in your area.
Terrific. And I also want to remind everybody that there's a lot of terrific programming on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. So I would invite all of you to go to www.xzbn.net for all the terrific program schedules, for all the programs on the net. You can visit me at www.paranormalstakeout.com or visit my Facebook page at Florida Bureau of Paranormal Investigation or Indian River Hauntings to get a hold of me. I also want to remind everybody again, if you want access to all these great shows on your cell phone, 24/7, 365, the number is 605-477-9614. So please check all of these great things out. Before the last break, Chad, we were talking about groups that may not mean harm but are causing harm. Of all the groups out there that you've dealt with, whether it's on purpose or by accident, percentage, what do you think?
I think the majority of people are, they're trying to do good. I don't want to say the majority are just in it for the money and they're trying to cause harm. Even if they are, I don't think that they're meaning to.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. There's some other facets of the paranormal world that might be more prone to that, but I think groups don't. I just think folks don't understand, but there's still a danger to the reputation of folks like yourself that's trying to do the right thing, gather data, gather information. Sorry, to find the answers to this question, and I want to really emphasize that to folks out there. If you're interested in this, seek out folks that are taking this seriously, want to find the answers. Not just go out for the thrill of the night necessarily, but really wanting to find the answers.
You don't want to play with fire either.
And what do you mean by that? I'll let you explain that one.
You don't want to go out on your own with no experience and not a whole lot of equipment and not knowing what you're doing. You can go into a place that has negative activity and get yourself something attached to yourself, or cause yourself harm.
Yeah, absolutely. And for a more, shall we say, celestial level, don't go into a place that's got no trespassing signs up, because the police will come and arrest you. It's not like it is on TV, folks. Don't a lot of those guys on YouTube go to places they shouldn't. Be careful. They'll even tell you that. Don't go to places that are marked no trespassing. We've spent a lot of time tonight, my friend, talking about process and protocols. Let's get back to the fun stuff for a second. Mm-hmm. Tell me about your most exciting investigation, your scariest investigation. Which investigation has affected you the most?
Scariest one? I'd say it was a house we did in Melbourne. It was, the owner bought it, and she contacted us and said, the lady that rents this house now says she would hear somebody fall down the stairs every morning at 2 a.m, and then come to find out it was a well-known drug house. And so we go in there, and then we get EVPs, a lot of EVPs, saying that they hated us, they didn't want us there, they wanted to kill us. Mm-hmm. So that was a fun one. And then we went back again to that location, playing all those EVPs on a loudspeaker to say, hey, we heard you. We heard all this negative stuff you were saying, and thinking maybe we'll get something different. No, it's more of the same, if not more.
Yeah, so that's a little bit of provoking. Would you agree?
Yeah, that's more provoking.
Yeah, not something I'll be honest with you, I personally condone for folks, especially newbies. Don't be doing that. You don't know what's going to happen. What did you do with those EVPs? Do you still have them? Did you collect them and catalog them at all, or?
I believe they're still on the old laptop, so we should still have them.
Okay, good, interesting. What was the most significant investigation you've come across? As far as evidence, as far as information that you were able to corroborate through historical research, that type of thing.
Okay. We actually worked, I'd say, in terms of with historical research, I would go with Ethel Allen's haunting. And I can thank Gail Sheldon for all that research.
Good old Gail.
She went crazy with that research. She got so much on Ethel Allen. Huh? So one of the last places she was seen was Ashley's Restaurant. Yep. It's a pretty famous haunting down there. I don't believe Ethel's there, but I believe it's one of the last places she was seen. So we start this investigation with Ethel spanned 3 to 4 locations.
Well, who's Ethel? To tell the audience who Ethel is, so they get a kind of a feel for this is. And this is folks. This is a fairly famous haunt in our neck of the woods here, with a lot of history to it. So explain who Ethel is, if you would.
So Ethel, back in the day, I don't remember the exact years. I think it was 30s or 40s. She was an 18 years old girl, tattooed. She was brutally murdered and just left by the riverbank or dumped in the river, whichever. But her leg was all but severed. She was scalped. She was burned. Jaw was hanging. It was terrible. Mm-hmm. But it was a cold case. Nobody ever solved it. They never found the killer.
And did your investigation provide any additional information at all that not to necessarily solve the crime, but maybe to identify her? I mean, what'd you get out of it?
We believe that we found the spot where she was actually murdered, and that's actually near the warehouse that we took you guys to. We've actually interacted with her at the warehouse. We could never get a straight answer out of her who actually killed her, though. She's changed her answers a couple of times.
And what type of equipment were you using to get these answers or to communicate?
Ethel tends to come through the real time or the spirit box. Those are her favorite ways of communication.
Okay. And here's a question for you, because a lot of times, we've come to believe they say there's somebody and they're not. In other words, they lie to us. How have you been able to determine, or what were you able to do to figure out whether or not that was actually Ethel you were speaking to?
So Ethel gave relevant answers and consecutive answers, because it wasn't just a one night and done kind of thing with Ethel. It was months and months of interacting with Ethel, and the stories you typically didn't change unless you asked her who killed her. Then she didn't. It was always ever changing.
Mm-hmm. Were you able to corroborate any of it with historical fact?
Yes, Gail was. Gail actually wrote a book on Ethel Allen called Ethel Allen's Dance with the Devil.
Oh, okay. May have to think about getting Gail on the show with me then. She actually wrote a book. Now, I think you brought up a really good point there, and another thing I want the audience to know too. You can't go to these spots one time and expect to get information that's going to solve the mystery. Would you agree?
I agree, because you can't make anything happen on command.
No, in fact, one of my favorite lines, it's like fishing. Sometimes they're biting, sometimes they're not. But more importantly, if you go by the theory that spirits are of the departed, well, then they probably retain human types of feelings and belief, and they're not circus animals that will perform on your command.
And the more you're around, the more they get used to you.
Yeah. How often do you think you investigated that one spot?
The warehouse, we investigated at least 10, 15 times, I'd say.
Yeah, see, when we're in the same boat with some of the places that we're doing research in Fellsmere, for example, the old City Hall, we do it a number of times using different techniques, trying to determine, get answers and then correlate how we got the answers. So we do the same thing in our neck of the woods, and I really hope that folks understand that you can't go to just one spot one time and expect to get any answers. So, any other particular haunts of interest that you've hit? I know you said St. Albans. That's a very famous one in the paranormal world.
Yeah, and it's always fun to go there. And we've built up a rapport with whatever's there, too. We actually have something come through. He's more of a trickster. He calls himself Me. So you'll know he's there because he'll kill your spirit box right away. So you'll say, "Oh, who's in the room with us?" And then he'll go, "Me," and then your spirit box will die.
Interesting. And when you say die, battery drain or?
Battery is just dead right away. You'll say, "Oh, who's there?" "Me," and then you can hear it start to go, and then it's gone.
Okay, no other explanation for why the piece of equipment died out?
No, usually when he comes through, that's when it goes out.
Interesting. Any full-body apparitions at St. Albans?
Not me personally, but others have. For me, we up in it's called Rebecca's room. It's upstairs in the attic next to the suicide bathroom where they say 5 people have killed themselves. That's where I usually get most of my activity. We actually had a little boy come through clear as day on the spirit box, and then it got knocked out of one of our investigators' hands.
Oh, that's lovely. Well, Chad, my friend, unfortunately, we have come to the end of our time together, but I want to thank you for being with me tonight. Folks, this is Larry Lawson on Paranormal Stakeout. Stay with us next week. We've got a great show coming, so be with us. I'm going to look forward to seeing you, and thank you again. And we will see you on the other side.
Modern Esoteric, Beyond Our Senses by Brad Olson, consummates the lifeology story about where humanity originates. It is the lost continents, the primitive wisdom, the mythos of creation, and the rethinking of ancient history as we are taught in academia. There is much more to the story than what we have been told. As this is the first book in the Esoteric series, Modern Esoteric starts at the beginning of time and accelerates up to this modern age. Future Esoteric is book 2 in the series and takes a forward-looking position ahead of today with an open and honest examination of the ET issue and various unexplained phenomena. To discover the writings of author Brad Olson, visit www.bradolson.com. That's www.bradolson.com. Are you or is someone you know struggling with addictions, depression, anxiety, relationships, low self-esteem, lack of confidence, grief, success, and prosperity? Do you know that your subconscious belief plays a big role in the outcome of your hard work? We can help you permanently change the beliefs that may be the reason for your struggles and failures. We care about getting you the return on your investment and the results you are looking for. We can help you be free of the limitations of your past and in realizing your highest potential. We work with people by phone and Skype. For more information, visit us at www.ritasoman.com. That's www.ritasoman.com. Do you think you have energy problems in your home? Do you feel better when you're away than when you're home? Joey Korn is a global leader in the world of dowsing who specializes in personal energy clearing and space clearing. He can help you create an ideal energy environment in your home no matter where you live in the world. Learn about his remote spiritual house cleaning services and much more at www.dowsers.com. You can get Joey's book, Dowsing, A Path to Enlightenment, as well as other dowsing books and tools, Kabbalah books, and Walter Russell books. Joey's work is really amazing. Go to dowsers.com right now. That's DOWSERS.com, or call 1-877-DOWSING. That's 1-877-369-7464.